Today's checkpoint is brought to you by Brother Elijah Gerak from Faith Mountain Pentecostal Church in Lakeside, California. Checkpoints are crafted to give you timely encouragement and focus as you navigate your journey. Think of them as quick stops to refresh and realign before continuing forward.
In 2 Peter chapter 2, Peter speaks of those that walk after the flesh in the lust of uncleanness. He continues to describe them as presumptuous, self-willed, speaking evil of things that they don't understand, eyes that are full of adultery, which have forsaken the right way and have gone astray. And right in the middle of this description of these horrible, wicked people, in verse 17 he stops and he gives us a word picture which challenged me. I hope it challenges you, and it forced me to reflect on myself. Verse 17 says, "These are wells without water, clouds that are carried with a tempest, to whom the mist of darkness is reserved forever." And at first it almost seemed absurd to me that a well that didn't have water could equate at all to this sinful, vile, disgusting, iniquitous person that Peter's talking about. But really, the more I thought about it, a well without water is useless. It's empty. It has no purpose. It has no meaning. It has now changed from something that used to give life to everyone who drew from it to something that is now a safety hazard for anybody nearby. And immediately I stopped and I asked myself, am I fulfilling my purpose? Am I productive? When someone comes to me, am I giving life? Am I encouraging people? Am I kingdom-minded and positive? Or am I a safety hazard? Do I lead people down cynical, negative paths that lead to nowhere good? And do I make people who minister for the church in whatever way, be it cadeting or sound or media, live stream music, whatever it is, do I make it feel like it's a chore or an obligation that you just have to do, but you'd rather be somewhere else? Matthew 7:16 says, "Ye shall know them by their fruits," which begs the question, do you have any fruit? In Matthew 21, Jesus saw a fig tree, and finding no fruit, he cursed it. Why did he do that? That's because it was not fulfilling the purpose for which God had created it. And this is why we can't just stop working for the kingdom. When you stop, you no longer produce fruit, and your well runs dry. Which is not only a dangerous thing for your spiritual health, but it's also dangerous for those who are around you, and it's really an evil thing in the sight of God. So sometime after finding this passage in 2 Peter, I was reading the story of Joseph, which I'm sure most of us know pretty well. He was favored by his father. That caused his brothers to hate him, and they sold him into slavery. Joseph rose from slave to right hand of the king, where he later saved those same brothers. And while I was studying this, I came across a passage that just blew my mind. In Genesis 37, Israel sent Joseph to go look for his brothers, who were supposed to be in Shechem feeding the flock. But they weren't in Shechem where they were supposed to be. They were in Dothan. Now, that's an important location, try and remember that. Verse 23 says, "And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him, and they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it." I'm no rocket scientist, but it seems to me that they threw Joseph into a well without water. In fact, Dothan in Hebrew stands for two wells. Now, I can only assume that there used to be two wells in Dothan, and now there's one well and one empty pit where there used to be water. Not only did the brothers leave the place where they were supposed to be, but they went to a place that has been corrupted and that no longer gives life and no longer has any water. Even if your well's doing great and it's productive and flowing, what about the people that you hang out with? What about the people that you choose to allow into your life to advise you and counsel you, or even really just for fellowship? How are their wells? Do they produce any fruit? Not only is it important for you to maintain the health of your well, but to make sure you surround yourself with friends, mentors, influences that maintain their wells. Maybe it's time to relocate from Dothan back to Shechem. Back in Genesis 26, we see the story of Isaac digging again the wells of water which they had digged in the days of his father Abraham. Why did he have to redig them? That's because the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham. There's a lot of things that we can pull from this scripture, but most importantly, if you have spiritually died and you're living in the flesh, which can look like a lot of different things, it doesn't have to just be, living in sin. Maybe it's really just selfishness. Maybe you feel that you're too old and it's someone else's turn, or you're too young and you can't minister the anointed way that the older ones can, so you just don't. Maybe it's laziness. Maybe you used to run a bus route and you used to sing in the choir, or you used to maintain the church grounds, or you used to teach Sunday school and you used to teach Bible studies. If this is you, you might want to check your well. It might be time to go and redig those wells to protect them and maintain them. Elijah didn't pass on the mantle to Elisha when he was just not feeling it anymore and wanted to sit back and watch someone else do the work of God. But he held on to that mantle for as long as he possibly could, and he didn't let it go until God was taking him home. Thank you so much for tuning into this checkpoint today. Revelations 12:11 says that we overcome not only by the blood of the Lamb, but also by the word of our testimony, and that's exactly what this Landmarks podcast is doing. So share this with your local church body, with your coworkers, with your friends at school. I promise it will encourage and uplift you in your own journey, and it can do the same for others. I pray that you take some time today to ensure that your well is maintained, that fresh water is flowing, and that you continue to fulfill the purpose and the will that God intended for your life. I pray this has motivated you in your walk with God to stay diligent and to not grow complacent. Once again, thank you for listening, and stay tuned for your next check.